Welcome back to Post Sports Live. I'm your host, Jonathan Forsythe. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Joining me in the Post TV studios are LaVar Arrington, Brandon Parker, and Dan Steinberg making a return from the DL. Dan, how you feeling, man?
I'm great.
You're good?
Yeah, I was sitting in the hospital thinking, man, the one place I really wish that I could be is the Post Sports Lives.
I'm sure you streamed us on your iPad or whatever from the hospital bed last week.
Multiple devices.
Brandon, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
We got a lot to talk about on today's show, guys. We're going to talk about the preview, the Game 5 tonight in Chicago. The Wizards hold a 3-1 lead in that best-of-7 series. We're going to talk about – we're also going to, because I couldn't resist, look ahead a little bit in case the Wizards do win this series. At their potential next opponent, Hawks hold a 3-2 lead over the Pacers. We'll talk about those potential matchups. We'll get into the Donald Sterling stuff, guys, and obviously there's a 2 p.m. news conference today in the NBA, but I'll ask you guys when you think he will continue to be the Clippers' principal owner, and whether or not by next year's All-Star break he'll still be in that position. We're going to catch up with Katie Carrera on the Capitals house cleaning and get her thoughts about Ovechkin's role in the GM search and the coaching search. And finally, guys, we'll wrap up with the Nationals and once again getting hit by the injury bug, a big one with Bryce Harper likely being out 2 months with the thumb injury. First things first, Brandon, let's start with you on Game 5. Wizards were able to win without Nene in Game 4 at home. Huge win that gave them the 3-1 lead. They're going back to Chicago. Give me some bold predictions or a bold prediction for Game 5 tonight in Chicago.
Well, I mean, this isn't going to sound like a bold prediction, but if you look at the numbers, it is. I think John Wall's going to have a huge game, like 30 and 10. And again, I know he's their leading scorer, but you look at the last 10 or 12 games, I think it is, he's only scored 20 points twice, and they lost both of those games. So, I mean, obviously he does well in the pass-first distributor role, but I mean, he has the talent to break out for a big game like that. So it seems like it's been a different guy every game, like Nene, Bradley Beal, Ariza. So I feel like it's Wall's turn.
It's Wall's turn on the big stage in the closeout game. Dan, give me a bold prediction for tonight.
I think that Ariza is not going to shoot the way he did. Maybe that's not bold, but I think he's going to have a poor night shooting. You know, he had a couple nights down the stretch where he didn't show this kind of form. And obviously he's had games during the season where it just felt like he couldn't miss, and that was one of those again on Sunday where, you know, we were all thinking what's going to happen without Nene. It didn't matter. I mean, it didn't matter at all largely because of what Ariza was doing. Obviously Booker filled some of the inside role, but I don't think that Ariza's going to shoot like that again. I think he's actually going to struggle from three-point land tonight.
All right, give me something, LaVar. What do you got?
I think right now, I think everybody expects and anticipates the Wizards to close the Bulls out. I would say my bold prediction is not so fast.
Hater.
I mean, it's either hater or homer. I mean, make the T-shirt hater or homer. But I think my bold prediction is I think that the Bulls extend the series another game.
Bring it back home. That'd be a Thursday night Game 6 in Washington. I'm going to go with Nene's return. I don't think he has a big game in a return performance. I think he has less than 10 points and less than 10 rebounds. But the Wizards find a way to close them out. That's my bold. Exactly. I always have a two-pronged bold prediction.
Brandon, everybody thinks they're going to close them out.
I think people in Washington do assume that. I think you're right.
Do you think so? And road teams to date, Brandon, are 19 and 14 in this postseason. It's kind of been a crazy postseason in the NBA so far.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks to the parity for this year. Like, obviously, people like the Heat and like Oklahoma City, and they're still hanging on.
Right.
But there was no real clear favorite like it's been the last 2-3 years. So, again, you're going to have, like, the Spurs struggling, the Pacers, who I know we'll talk about later. But for Tuesday's game with the Wizards, it's going to be decided in the first quarter. If the Wizards get out to a fast start, it probably will be game over because the Bulls just don't have enough offense to come back and must. I mean, Gibson looks good, but if he's your best scorer, it's not good.
Can I say one thing about that home court thing? Over the weekend, the last couple of games when we were talking about games at the lower seed home, there were very few teams. I don't even know if there are any teams that played as well at home as the Wizards did on Sunday. And it's strange because the Wizards were not a particularly good home team this year. Yeah. But even look at the teams that won at home, Portland and Dallas. They were like
Golden State maybe.
Yeah, Golden State maybe, but they were teams like just eking out close wins,
right.
And the Wizards just had that game really comfortably pretty much the entire time.
Right, but Brandon, to your point, they've outscored the Bulls in the first quarter of every game of the series,
Yep.
But then they've also shown the resiliency to come back from double-digit deficits in the second half. So it's sort of it's good to get out to that early start, but then it seems like in the second quarter, third quarter, they're sort of letting it up a little bit, at least the first 2 games of the series they had.
Yeah, not game 4.
Let's look ahead, guys. And obviously, this is not assuming anything, but if the Wizards were to win either Game 5, Game 6, or Game 7, they'd advance to the second round for the first time since 2005, where they would meet either the Indiana Pacers, the top seed, who have been struggling, and trail the 8th-seeded Atlanta Hawks now 3-2 going back. That series goes back to Atlanta on Thursday night for Game 6. Brandon, talk about the matchups between the Pacers and the Wizards and the Hawks and the Wizards, and which one, I assume it's the Hawks, but which one works out better for the Wizards?
The Wizards are a better team than the Hawks. The question is, 2 weeks ago when we were talking, we were saying the Bulls are going to kill the Wizards. So it's kind of the tables have shifted, and the Wizards are kind of the favorites. So you wonder, is that urgency, desperation still going to be there going up against the Hawks because you think, we can beat this team. So I think they match up better with the Hawks on paper, even though the Hawks probably play a bit more up-tempo than the Pacers, which is what the Wizards like. But the way Roy Hibbert's playing with Indiana, I feel like Nene and Gortat could just feast on him down low. So honestly, you really couldn't go wrong either way. But that's not to say that they're just going to roll to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I feel like on paper, the Hawks are slightly better to play against.
Dan, I don't know that I agree. Because at this point, the Hawks are the team that is totally handling the Pacers. And what you say about Hibbert, there's something wrong. There's just something wrong. He's not. It doesn't look like the player that we knew.
He's a shell of himself.
Yeah, they're not good. They were down by 30 yesterday, right, against Atlanta at home. I can't imagine a way in which that team suddenly pulls it together at this point.
But
so
if they do, that could be that's the thing. The Hawks don't really have that switch that they can turn on.
You keep saying if they do, but at this point, in an absolutely crucial game for them at home, finally maybe having a little bit of momentum after winning in Atlanta, and they come out and do that, I just don't think they have it anymore. I think there's something wrong. And obviously the home court advantage you would think would help the Wizards, but they've sort of been a better road team, or at least as good a road team as they have been a home team for much of the year. So I don't know that really plays into it that much either. I think that they'd almost rather have the Pacers.
LaVar, the regular season record, Wizards were 3-1 versus the Hawks, 1-2 versus the Pacers, and were manhandled, averaging less than, or getting outscored by 11 points per game against the Pacers. Does that mean anything in this postseason?
In the postseason, no. I don't think it means anything. When I look at this potential matchup, assuming that the Wizards are able to advance to the second round, I don't think that they will underestimate either one of these teams that they play, because for what it's worth, I think you can see a sense of resolve with this Wizards team. That's first and foremost. They're playing like they're in the NCAA tournament. That's what's coming to mind when I'm watching how these guys are playing. It's like they're in the NCAA tournament. It's different, and they're playing that way. When I look up matchup-wise, which team would be better for them to play, regardless of circumstances or current way they're playing, it's still a better matchup to play against Atlanta than it is to play against a team like Indiana. Why? Because there's too many dangerous players on that Indiana Pacers team, and if you give a Paul George, if you give some of these guys that are, in my opinion, from top to bottom, a West, if you give these guys the opportunity to find themselves, whichever game that may be, I do think that they're still a dangerous team. When you look at Atlanta, it's a bunch of role players that are running this team.
Sort of like what we talked about the Bulls in a way.
Yeah, I just don't see a definitive superstar go-to player. Millsap was a role player that came to Atlanta. Teague is a very talented, gifted point guard, but still a role player. You don't have a bona fide guy on Atlanta, and right now, if we were debating, I think you could say John Wall is that guy, but you could also say Bradley Beal is that guy. And as Dan mentioned, maybe we're looking for Ariza to slow down, but Ariza is almost like Robert Horry on steroids in playoffs. Like, there's always that one guy that you're like, how does this guy show up every single game the way that he does in the playoffs? And that was Robert Horry for a long time. I think Ariza.
You got to pick your poison with the Wizards.
I think Ariza Ariza is a gamer. He's a playoff gamer.
One of the key things about the Hawks, and there was a great write-up in our new blog, Fancy Stats, about how the Hawks are averaging more three-point attempts than free throw attempts. They shoot the three more than any team in the league. And if they're hot, they can beat anybody from out there.
Yeah,
but that's
game series, though. That's a little bit
It goes
different. Like,
by
this is not like an 11-6
Okay,
NCAA
all right.
tournament
So
game,
poo-poo the three-point stat. It's just something to throw out there as a factor with the Hawks because they rely on that a lot, and they've got Korver, one of the best shooters in the league.
I certainly think the Hawks are going to win that series, personally.
I think they may pull the upset as well.
We didn't just jinx anything by talking about potential next matchups.
I don't believe in jinxes,
right,
but
good.
it is a tad bit premature.
It is a tad. We admit that it's premature, but since we do the show weekly, we want to make sure we're on top
There
of
you
things.
go.
All right, guys, let's move on to the Donald Sterling issue. There's a 2 p.m. news conference today in New York where new Commissioner Adam Silver will discuss the investigation and potentially dole out some punishment or a fine or a suspension of some sort for Donald Sterling. The question here is whether or not you guys think, I'm going to make it a true-false, by next year's NBA All-Star break, which would be February of 2015 roughly, will Donald Sterling still be the principal owner of the LA Clippers, LaVar?
Yes, true.
True.
Yes.
The pressure will not be so high. He'll still be there. Give me some reasoning behind your thought.
I mean, there have been, if you look at the most recent racial outbursts that have taken place, I don't know which one is worse. I'll beat all them N-words up, or why you have to have these guys. He never even used a racial slur, to be honest.
Correct.
So obviously it was bigoted. It was ignorance that was in the words that he was saying. But you're talking about someone who was recorded on a video using racial slurs and was sent away for a few days and then ends up getting rewarded with a new contract. I just think that we live in a society that sensationalizes anything that kind of breaks the social norms that have been created. And once the next big story comes out, people move on. And all it takes is a couple dollars out of his budget for a team to do damage control on what it is that he said and what he did, put a couple dollars into a charity, and somebody says, oh, he's learned his lesson, and you move on from it. That's just generally what our society does.
Brandon, CarMax, Mercedes-Benz, Virgin America Airlines, Sprint, Kia Motors, Red Bull, all among sponsors that are apparently pulling their sponsorships and support from the Clippers. Obviously, we're at a sort of a high point on the uproar nationally about what happened. It's indefensible if that is his voice from the recording. Do you agree with LaVar that he'll remain as principal owner into next year?
I wouldn't say it as definitively as LaVar, but I think it's going to be harder than people think. Like, I think people are just assuming he's going to lay down and die. Like, if you listen to the tape, he generally doesn't think there's anything wrong with his thinking, that he said anything wrong. He doesn't think that he's a racist. So just because there's outrage about it doesn't mean he's just going to maybe not even fight back, sue the league or whatever. It's going to take he's got a lot of money, but if he starts affecting the NBA as a business where the other owners are like, okay, we can't have him anymore, that's when you're going to start to see a major push.
And it will still be hard. It will still be difficult to remove him, even if that is the case.
Because it would take an extreme, like players not playing and just
we
so
all
many
know
things.
That's not
But
going
players
to
not
happen.
playing, good players not playing is not going to affect other owners because they want the Clippers to be filled with bad players. That's why they put up with Sterling for so many years, because he was putting a terrible product out on the floor. So there was one win for them whenever they went out there. I think you guys are right. To me, the wild card in all this, though, is that Adam Silver has a chance here to assert himself and to show that I don't think he wants to look weak here, and I don't think he wants to look like he's going to roll over. So I think that there's a good chance this winds up being extremely messy and being in court. And Sterling, kind of loves to mix it up. He's a former lawyer, I think. I think he would love to mix it up and spill dirty laundry all over a courtroom. But I think
he has the support of the other owners, and that's the key.
Does he have the support of the other owners?
Well,
That's got to be eroding.
16,
that's eroding support at this point.
Well, I think that 16, as it applies to this in particular, this situation, I think
Silver has the support.
Silver
has the support.
Yes,
certainly.
I see what you mean.
Yes.
Okay,
I don't think with his first major decision, with everyone paying attention, I don't think that he can afford to back down on this one. So I think it's got to go somewhere.
But it's like, how much can he do? Like, you suspend him. He's not playing. What does that do?
They're going to suspend him indefinitely.
That's the most he can do
right now.
Right.
So,
but that's unprecedented. It never happened to an NBA.
I mean, if you can pull off suspending him indefinitely, and in some way somehow that impacts and affects the way that organization is ran in his eyes, there's a possibility you may have that conversation because he can sell that franchise for a lot more. I think he bought it for like 13 million, 18 million, and so it's worth it's worth so much more now. Right. So I just think it's if you bought something for $13 million, $18 million, and it's worth $300 million plus now, you're not going to just run somebody off from that. You're not running somebody off away from that.
I'd still be surprised if the owners didn't, behind closed doors, encourage him to think about selling in some form.
Well, even if they're going to do that, but what's that going to do?
I think it's going to. I think they're going to convince him.
Dan Snyder.
Yeah, I mean, like,
we want you to sell.
If I encourage you behind closed doors to quit your job, are you going to quit? Like, I mean, that
depends on how convincing you are.
Well,
it's probably going to be more pressure than encouraging at this point.
All right, exactly, right. Yeah. Well, obviously, lots to go there. Let's move on, guys. We'll see how that plays out, and obviously watch closely the Silver news conference later today. Earlier this morning, we caught up with Katie Carrera, who joined us following the cleaning house of the Capitals over the weekend. Yesterday was George McPhee's sort of exit interview, so to speak, with the press. Let's hear from Katie in a one-on-one. Joining me now via Skype is Capitals beat writer Katie Carrera. Katie, welcome back to Post Sports Live. Thanks for joining us.
Anytime, John.
Katie, first thing I wanted to know about, what stood out to you about the way that this house cleaning went down?
I think this was probably a necessary process for the Capitals and for Ted Leonsis and team president Dick Patrick to go through sort of and break down the organization, interview everybody, talk to everybody, and sort of take stock of where things are, because this was a thorough autopsy, if you will, of every sort of corner of the organization. Yes, it took 2 weeks to reach the decision that George McPhee and Adam Oates wouldn't be returning next year, but one would hope that this gave them a better idea of what direction they need to head into and sort of what kind of perspective they want in terms of a new general manager and coach coming in.
Katie, is the number one question for a prospective new general manager or a head coach how they would manage Alex Ovechkin?
If it's not number one, it's at least 1, 2, or 3. Because Alex Ovechkin is who the Capitals have built their organization on the ice and off around, coming up with a plan of the type of team you want to build with him in it, what you want to ask him to do, whether or not a coach wants to try to continue pushing him towards that well-rounded two-way type of player, or if they're going to say, you know what, go score your 51 goals and we'll worry about the rest of the team around you and try to give you the environment where you can score goals, but we're not counting on you in your own end, and maybe find a balance that way. I think figuring out how prospective general managers and coaches approach using and building the team around Alex Ovechkin, because he's not going anywhere anytime soon, or that certainly seems to be the indication right now, is critical.
Is it possible then that, given Ovechkin's reputation, that he could actually discourage certain candidates for either a head coach or GM position from taking and throwing their hat in the ring for the Caps job, given his polarizing nature with head coaches in the past?
I think it's certainly possible, but at the same time, I wouldn't put it past various general manager and coaching candidates to look at him as a challenge they want to try to take on, because who wouldn't really want to be the guy that can help Alex Ovechkin and the Caps get over the hump? But there could be some folks that say, you know what, maybe this is a headache I don't want to deal with.
The last 3 head coaches, Katie, obviously were first-time NHL head coaches. Do you expect that trend to change now?
It's very hard to predict a coach before there's a general manager, or if you don't really know sort of what order they're going to do the hiring process in. I think they could use an experienced voice there. All of the 5 coaches George McPhee hired were first-time NHL head coaches. I think they need someone who has that authority, that experience, has been through a lot in the NHL already to earn that instant respect.
You were at George McPhee's exit interview, so to speak, yesterday out of Kettler. Do you agree with him when he says that the current roster is a playoff roster and with a few minor adjustments could be a Stanley Cup team?
I think if the Capitals had been healthy, if they had just a little more depth this year, they probably would have found a way to squeak into the playoffs. It wasn't as though that they were 10 points out. When he talks about not needing a significant overhaul for this team to truly contend for a championship, I can see that. They need defensive depth, they need top 4 defensive depth, and they need some extra help down the middle of the lineup at center. And I think with those 2 things alone, you could help push the Capitals substantially in a positive direction. Now, would that completely get them over the hump? I don't know. But just shoring up those 2 things, center depth and getting some elite defensive help, would definitely go a long way to making them not only a playoff team, but closer to a contender.
Well, Katie, thanks for your coverage. Thanks for joining us today. We'll look forward to hearing from you again on the show in the coming weeks as there are some hires made.
Yep, anytime.
Thanks, Katie. All right, Dan, so I want to throw the same question to you that I finished with Katie there. Do you agree with George McPhee that this team, as it's currently set up, is a playoff roster and with just a couple of moves could be a Stanley Cup team?
I mean, I think the obvious way to respond is no. We saw what this team was, and this team was a middle-of-the-pack team that really needed to kind of fight and claw even to be middle of the pack. That was, at some point in the season in danger of falling kind of far back in the pack. There are major questions in the blue line. Kuznetsov obviously gave them a boost, but I think that's wishful thinking, unless you want to take the stance that every team in the NHL is 3 or 4 players away.
Bingo. That's the broad stroke of that statement. You could say that about a lot of teams in the league, is that the roster as is with a couple more changes.
A couple of things.
Right. Could be a playoff contender. I mean, they have made the playoffs every year leading up to this season. So they are a playoff roster because you've had guys in the playoffs. But you could say it's such a broad stroke of a statement. I mean, you could use that in any scenario.
And not to jump back in, best of 7 series there's obviously kind of luck and chance involved here and there. But this is a team that never made it out of the second round. They've never made it out of the second round. So I think to talk about being a cup team, if you're in the Eastern Conference Finals and you get a bad break and you lose in 7 games, whatever, of course you can see that scenario. I mean, it's hard to imagine right now that they're a cup contending team when they have not shown us anything in the postseason and now aren't even in the playoffs.
But you can assume that that's a sellable statement because of the name recognition of the players you have on your roster. It's like an easy play for somebody who's strategically trying to position what it is that they did in terms of what their job was. I mean, if I'm George McPhee, I can tell you I brought Nicholas Backstrom here. I brought Alex Ovechkin here. I brought Michael Green here. These are guys that we have looked at as all-stars. They are MVPs. So I can make that a sellable statement based off of the work that I've done because of their name recognition. So he's right in what he's saying, but the reality of it is you also have a different type of expectation on you when you bring those type of players in and you can't make it out of the second round of the playoffs.
But Brandon, I mean, he's certainly proud of what he built here in Washington. It came through in those words. I mean, would you agree that with LaVar that those are mostly accurate statements and anybody could say they're 2 or 3 players away?
Especially in the NHL with the parity that you have. I mean, it's not like the NBA where it's kind of the same 10, 8 teams. Like every year, there are so many moves in the NHL in the offseason, and like LaVar said, he's brought in guys that are known. And I mean, aside from this year, they make the playoffs, so they are in that contention discussion there every year. But yeah, I mean, anybody could say that, and I think he's not, far off by saying that, but it's easy to say.
Yeah, I mean, one thing you'd have to say about McPhee, give him credit for trying at the trade deadline many years to try to add and bolster a team for a run didn't pan out a lot, and obviously that came back to hurt them.
I think George McPhee did many, many great things. I don't know why you would give him credit for making trades that didn't work out.
Well, you can point to Oates and his unwillingness to use Penner, and like there was some friction there on that
but he's
one.
the general manager. He hired the coach.
It's fair. But I mean, he was swinging the bat. He was taking a swing. They didn't pan out, but at least he was aggressively trying to improve that team. With that core to make a run that year.
To be honest, I think that if he had less aggressively tried the year that he dealt off Forsberg or the year that he dealt Cody Eakin, then you'd have a couple more players right now.
Well, and that's the point. He by making those short-term moves, they thinned the cabinet, and they didn't have the depth they needed.
What we can agree on is that the barrel, that roulette game that was being played with coaches and the general manager will now turn to the players. That's what we can agree on. You can no longer.
Probably right. One player in particular.
And one player in particular. You cannot point the barrel at a general manager or coach.
Well, that's
anymore.
a good segue. Let's segue to another player who's had many barrels from the media pointed at him for his style of play in the last couple of years. Bryce Harper. Obviously, he slides head first in a game, legging out a triple, and he busts up his thumb. I want to start with you, Dan, on this, and I want you to complete this sentence. Harper's latest thumb injury indicates that A, he plays too hard, B, he's injury prone, C, he's unlucky, D, none of the above, and stop overreacting.
I don't think it's overreacting. I think at this point in his career, you can call him injury prone. I think that, enough different things have happened in enough different incidents over enough different seasons that, this is a pattern. It doesn't necessarily mean that the pattern is going to continue for the next 10 years or 12 years, but there's a pattern now of him not just being able to finish seasons healthy, but being able to even come close to finishing seasons healthy. And, clearly he's not going to be considered one of the great players in the game when he's missing 40 games a year. So, you hope that this changes somehow, but I think as of right now, it's fair to say that he's injury prone.
Brandon, do you agree he's injury prone, or is this sort of just dumb luck?
I take that as one sentence. I say his latest injury is because he plays hard, and because of that he's injury prone, and because of that he can be unlucky. But stop overreacting. Like he's
wait. All of the above wasn't one of the options.
But it's like a sentence. Like if you want him to play hard, that's what's going to happen sometimes. And you want to be wise and you learn with age. You can't go 100 miles an hour all the time. But it's not like he's missing the whole season. It's not like the Nationals haven't had a whole bunch of injuries. He needs to be out there, yes, but I wouldn't say for him to just totally turn it off and to be out there every day like a Cal Ripken, that's great, but that's the way he plays. If you want to be effective, he's got to go hard.
So you do, wait, are you saying Cal Ripken didn't go hard?
No, I'm not saying that.
I think that is sort of the point, though. I think that, like Ian Desmond, you wouldn't say that he doesn't go hard.
Right.
Mike Trout, you wouldn't say that he doesn't play hard.
Right.
Right, so it's just that's his style of play. It's not knocking.
So you're saying
else.
there is a relation, his style of play to the injuries.
Right, for him to be effective, he has to do that.
LaVar, would you agree?
Well, that was the way I played, and I played 4 years. I had a 7-year career, but I played 4 years because I played hard. I played hard in practice. I practiced hard, and I played hard. So the interesting thing is, it's funny because I can recall the first practice that I had, I was going 100 miles an hour, and Bruce Smith grabbed me on my shoulder and said, slow down. Slow down. Like,
this is your rookie season?
My rookie season, like first practice, like Bruce Smith is like, dude, like breathe and slow down, right? I think what process is taking place.
Bruce Smith did for the Redskins.
He broke the record.
That's true.
And I was on that play, by the way. I'm part of history. There you go. I was part of that 200.
Sorry. Back to.
So, anyways, yeah, right. That's the only thing historical about my career. The thing about it is, when you look at Bryce Harper, one of two things is going to happen. Either he's going to understand how you get through seasons with the amount of games that they play, or he won't. Or he won't. So that's going to be what plays out right now. So what I would say is Bryce Harper is learning how to be a professional right now. He's in the learning process. Some people have a lot of success while they're going through learning that process. Some guys have varied levels, some guys have no success at all, and then they end up being great pros. He's learning how to be a professional. He's got to learn how to get through the games. He has to know that, you know what, this early in the season, I know I can bust up a thumb. I know I can break my face if I run into this wall, and understand that it's not a crime to protect your body during a long season.
Yeah, I think you could go further than that. I mean, to the extent that this stuff is in his control, I mean, he owes it to the fans and he owes it to his teammates to be on the field. I don't think you can just say, oh, he's learning, because he had last year to learn that. Now we're talking about 2 more months of a season when this team really needs to win games. They're already kind of down a few men. They need him out on the field. They don't need him rehabbing a thumb.
But for someone who has played the style of baseball that he has played his entire life, and I do honestly believe that sometimes that process takes a little bit longer than it does for others. Like he plays 100 miles an hour, and I respect that, and I love that about every athlete. But there's also that level of understanding how to take care of your body, the maintenance of that, and how you navigate a game. You don't necessarily learn that in one season. You don't necessarily learn that in 2 seasons. I mean, it took me several seasons to figure out how my off season should go, when I should start working out, how much rehab I should get, even if I don't need rehab, like what to eat. Like I just learned how to eat now. Now I'm 6 years removed from my career,
I'm sure you'll have a
and I'm
great
just
year next year.
I might still be playing if I knew some of the things that I know now.
Right.
I might still be playing. So some people get it, some people learn it, and some people it just takes a little longer for them. Some people never learn.
It's a major bummer, man. And
it does.
This is like the 3rd year in a row, certainly the 2nd year in a row, where it's going to be hard for him to meet the expectations that he had for himself and that people had for him. People talk about MVP candidates. You can't do that when you're not playing.
Look, dumb luck is part of this, guys. I mean,
I don't
it's
believe
two
in luck.
injuries. All right, well,
Especially dumb
injuries
luck.
happen to everybody. But all of a sudden, how smart does Mike Rizzo look for going out and signing Nate McLeod to the 2-year, $10 million deal in the offseason? Now it's his time. Even though he struggled to start the season, now they've got a guy who
That might have been dumb luck.
That might have been dumb. All right, fine. You guys aren't giving me the luck. All right, for Dan Steinberg, Brandon Parker, LaVar Arrington. Hopefully we didn't curse the Wizards with our conversation at the beginning of this show. Thanks for joining us on Post Sports Live. Hopefully next Tuesday we'll be talking about their round 2 matchup against some other team. Further the curse.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us. See you next week.